Fat Man Firearms.
Hi, my name is Tanner, and today we're going to be doing a video overview of the J. Stevens Arms and Tool Company Model 520. This shotgun has a hell of a history. It started out life as a John Browning patent. He filed the patent in 1903, and then it was approved in 1905. And that patent was for the firing mechanism. It was called the hammerless design, and I think that's because there was no external hammer. Because this weapon is definitely hammer fired. It's just all inside. Can't really see the hammer. And the second patent was approved. I can't find the application date, but it was approved in 1907. And then in between 1907 and 1909, the Browning sold the rights to J. Stevens Arms and Tool Company. And from 1909 to 1916, they produced the initial run of the 520. The 520 is a 12 gauge single barrel shotgun with a 5-round tube magazine plus one in the chamber for 6 rounds full capacity, which is really nice for a shotgun. The thing that makes this stand out is it's a takedown shotgun. You don't see a whole bunch of those, and you definitely don't see a whole bunch of those around the 1900 area. It's very easy to use, very easy to take care of. I had to do a little bit of work in restoring this thing to where it is right now. I bought it at a pawn shop. You can find these things easily for $200, $300 if they're in really good condition. If they're less, a little bit less. I got this thing for about $175. It was in really rough condition. It doesn't look like it had been cleaned in about 100 years. It had grease everywhere. I had to take it apart, dip everything in turpentine. It was gross. But she's hard back at work, and she's a really, really quality shotgun. Now the first thing I'm going to get into is how to take this thing down, because holy cow, it took me forever to figure it out. I didn't actually know it was a takedown shotgun when I bought it. I just wanted kind of a rough and tumble shotgun to go out into the field and kind of dick around with. But apparently it is a takedown. Now the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure it's empty. So, yep, it's empty. So, on the very early models, the slide release was actually just a flat machine screw, just on the side here. That would later be replaced by an actual button, and then in the, I think 1911 or 12 to past that, it would actually be moved to buy the trigger guard, so an actual, what we consider today to be a normal slide release. But up until that, it was a machine screw right here. So you push up on that, pull the slide back. Now these grooves up here, that's what I couldn't figure out. These grooves are actually a gripping area. So you just twist the entire tube magazine, and down here, the locking plate will disengage from the actual receiver of the firearm. So you unscrew that to where it's good, and you're going to slide the entire thing down, maybe half a centimeter at most. It's not very far, but it's just all it needs for the front slide connection rod to disengage from the actual bolt carrier. So, just going to slide that back up so everything is out of the way, and the entire thing just comes apart. Real easy. Not for me, I had to figure that out. It took me like 2 or 3 days to figure that out. So, have a nice handy package. If you're going out in the field, if you're hopping out around in a truck and you have a hard case for this thing, it's really nice because all you need is that much space. It's a really long shotgun. It is a full-length, rifle-length shotgun. And having that in a full soft case is really annoying. And honestly, I'm looking at making a case for this thing just so it looks nice and presentable. It's going to be a real nice package. Excuse me. And that's it. That's all you need to do. Do the same thing in reverse to put it back together. So we make sure that the bottom grooves line up. Click it back together so everything lines up. Put your slide down so it clicks back into place. You screw the connection plate back together, make sure it's firm on there, slide up, and you're good to go. That's it. You're done. Super easy. I am going to go into a full disassembly video here on the second half of the film, but for now we're just going to go over a little bit of the history here. The Model 520 was, of course, produced between 1909 to 1916, and then again was produced after J. Stevens was sold to Savage in 1920. Savage production went from 1920 to 1939. Kind of reading off my notes here. There's a lot of history here behind this thing. 1920 to 1939, and then from that it was produced as the Model 520A, and the Model 520A went from 39 to 48. And it didn't stop there. It didn't stop usage there. It saw military service from World War II to Vietnam and all conflicts in between. So it's a very high quality shotgun because it can go through combat and see the next war and the war after that. That'll tell you something. It was produced as the Model 520 in military terms, but it was technically the Model 520A to us civilians. There was also the Model 620, which is a more streamlined version. So you'll see this has what's called the whale hump, or just the hump back. It is reminiscent of the Browning's other famous firearm, the BAR, Browning Automatic Rifle. The 620 does not have this, and the traditional shotgun style you see right now with the sloping back, that's what that had. So a little bit more sleek, but I think this thing has a little bit more style. It gives it that unique look. The 620 was produced between 1927 and 1939, and then the 620A was between the 1939 and 1955. And they're a little bit easier to find. There were models sold at Sears and Roebuck and a whole bunch of other different retailers. They were licensed out as they would do that. And those were mostly 620 A models. There were, 901, 191,600 on the books made that we can find per model. But the older records that we have might not be reliable, so it's possible that more were produced and just not recorded because we can't find military records, or just because they dropped off the books somewhere, or just because we simply don't have those records. It is an extremely resilient shotgun. This one's built 108 years ago. Took it out a few days ago to the range, and it performed beautifully. I put low brass shot shells through it. It does take 2 3/4 inch shot shells. Didn't want to put high brass or medium brass through there just because it is an antique and I didn't want to stress it too much. But it performed beautifully. It is slam fire. There's no trigger disconnect. So every time you pull the trigger, you can pull back the pump, slam it fire again, or slam it home again, and it will fire. Which you don't see that anymore because people are kind of mean about that. They don't like that kind of thing in shotguns, but here we are. 108-year-old piece of machinery. It's got it. Nobody cares. Yeah, it's a real workhorse. I plan on taking it hunting the next time. I bought it just because I wanted to have a shotgun where I didn't have to take my A5 out into the field, another Browning design. I didn't have to take my A5 out into mud or whatever because it's a beautiful shotgun. And this thing isn't quite as beautiful, but it will get the job done, and it's a solid piece of machinery. There was a prototype made in 1918 for the military. It wasn't approved. It did have the 2-part heat shield and a bayonet lug. That was produced 1918 and never saw military combat use, although apparently there are some prototypes that are still around, but nobody can find them. So they're probably in the hands of private collectors or sitting in some military warehouse somewhere. It'd be nice to see those, but we're never probably going to see those. The military models for World War II and forward, they're definitely out there. You can find pictures of them. They look really cool. They're basically the separate but equal counterpart to the 1897 Winchester. which is also slam fire. It does have the external hammer on it. I don't know. Same type of deal, I guess. I guess you either got issued one of those or this shotgun, the 528. Yes, there were officially 11 variants of the 520 and 620 shotguns. They basically ranged from different calibers or different weights, either having less material or stamping, or I don't know. They had the I can't remember the date. It was 12 gauge only up until the 1920s, and then they added a 20 gauge variant. I haven't seen one of those. I haven't seen one of these either, I guess. I don't know how popular those are. I think that those were produced by Sears and Roebuck, but I can't be sure. It does not have the traditional rear sights, as most shotguns do. It does have the front bead up here, which is just a simple brass bead, and then it does have kind of along the top of the hump, it's a little squared off, and then there's a tiny little, maybe 3/4 of a centimeter gap in between the top, and that's for some reason ridged. I don't know, but it gets the job done, I suppose. Works just fine. It is a full wood stock, so the foregrip is wood, the rear stock is wood. Does have a plastic-like material as the butt pad. Not too comfortable, but not too uncomfortable either, I suppose. It does have a safety on it, which is nice, and the safety is not in the traditional place a safety would be. The safety is right in front of the trigger here, and honestly is a little bit loose, and that's probably the age. I took it apart and cleaned it really well, and it used to be just floppy back and forth, but right now it's right at a nice, kind of loose, but not kind of stiff either, which is, I'll take that. Due to the way that it's manufactured, having the firearm cocked in the ready position, but without a bullet or a cartridge in the chamber, I suppose, it is easier to load cocked than uncocked. I don't know what that is. It's just the loading ramp lever thing down here. The foreplate is just loose, so keep the bullets out of here. It is clear. So right now you can see it's slightly stiffer, and I'd have to push it down so it goes to here normally, and then there's a little extra space where it gets really tough. But if I cock it, have the hammer in the right position, slide forward, that entire space is just really easy. So if you're planning on shooting one of these things, remember that. Cock it first, then load, and then chamber around. Or chamber around, then load. I don't know. That's your preference. Do whatever you want. It does have a unique locking lug, and that's at the top of the hump right here. You can see that little square. I don't know if you can see it from the camera. That square right there is the locking lug. So disconnect it. You can see the square opens up right here. Put it forward. That's the locking lug. Kind of a weird, we'll get into it when we disconnect it, of course, but it is a weird kind of like slide shape. I've never seen anything like it, but it's a pretty good design, I guess. Gets the job done. So I'm going to stop here, and we're going to go into the disassembly video, and we'll go from there. Cool. Alright, so we are going to delve into the second part of this video. If I make any mistakes, forgive me. I'm not going to have a take two on this video, so if I have to back up a little bit and do whatever, then that's going to happen. So this is a one shot, one take situation. So to disassemble this, you actually don't need that many tools, although I do have the handy multi-tool here. You just basically need a screwdriver set, which is nice so you don't have to have any pliers or anything. I think it's been a while since I cleaned this, so bear with me on this one. Basically, I have the kind of multi-tool type deal, and the one that I have on there right now is the one I'm going to use the most, but of course I do have the separate components here, and then I do have a larger, more serious screwdriver. Now, if you do have a gunsmith's screwdriver set, I would suggest using those for the initial disassembly if you buy one of these things, just because the bolts can be kind of rough, and those things are real gentle on guns, which is nice. Now, the first thing you're going to do, of course, is make sure the firearm is cleared. So, yep. And then, just like in the first half of the video, disassemble it, which is nice and easy to do. So, just go click, pull that forward, and there we go. I've got the camera off to the side here. It's not going to be directly in front of me, just so I can see what I'm doing here, so bear with me on that. So we're going to disassemble the front half first, just because it's the easiest thing to do and all of that. So I just like to slide this back to the back so I can get a good grip on it here. And then this is where the larger screwdriver comes in, because all you need to do really is disassemble this screw right here. And it is spring loaded, so watch your shit. Whoop. So it will deceivingly stay assembled just through sheer spring power until you lift up on it. And then this comes apart. And you get your follower spring. From that, the entire thing just kind of falls apart. So, turn it upside down. You will get your slide, of course, and it will either come out with it or just fall out as the follower, magazine follower. And then you have your barrel, which you can clean and do whatever you need to. And then, of course, clean your follower because it's going to have grime on it, inside and out. And, of course, your spring. The spring is universal to either direction. There's no specific way that it's supposed to go in that I've found. So, either way is fine. Make sure you get all the grime off there. Like I said in the first half, turpentine does a really good job. Varnish stripper, as harsh as that sounds, does a pretty good job as well. This is the end that connects to the receiver. Now you can unscrew this if you want, all the way, and clean the threads. That's what I did. You have to put it back together. This is the most difficult part. All you have to do is line up. Yeah, this little notch right here. Wait, is it? There's supposed to be a notch on here. Where did it go? I think it is. Yeah, so I think you're supposed to line up this notch, which is kind of either a wear spot or something from the connecting rod here. You're supposed to line that up with this little dot thing. Yeah, you can see that on there. So that thing lines up with this thing, I think. I know it lines up with something, but for the life of me, I cannot find it right now. But whatever. So all I need to do to reassemble it is push that to the rear there, put in your follower, put in your follower spring, make sure it doesn't fly out somewhere. Push that in, line that up, Oh, I'm pretty sure you haven't cleaned a pump shotgun unless you've forgotten to put on the slide. There we go. Good to go. So that's the front half. And that was by far the hardest part of this. No, I'm lying. This is the hard part. The receiver is easy to take apart. If you don't know what you're doing, it's hard to put back together. What I'm going to do first is take off the wooden stock just so it's out of the way. There we go. So, tidy receiver, tidy stock. You're going to want to clean up in here and up in here just to make sure that all the grime's out of there, because it will build up grease and, of course, have grease get soaked up by the wood, and then when you shoot it, it gets unsoaked and it gets grimy and it's gross. So, make sure to get that out of the way. Now, basically, there's two parts to this. There's the top half and the bottom half. The bottom half is the trigger guard and basically the entire firing mechanism assembly, and then bottom strap for the grip. That's what you take apart first, basically. You're going to take out the... I suggest having little cups or somewhere to put screws and stuff, because there is a lot of them. You don't want to lose them, because that would be terrible. So, like I said in the first half, the slide release button is really just a machine screw, so you're going to undo that. That just comes out. And then there's 3 screws holding on the bottom. So you're going to take out 1. This is where multiple screw sizes comes in handy, or multiple blade sizes. 2. So I got these 1, 2. Now this is, like I said, the slide release button hole, so I don't need to worry about that. You flip it over, and then there's going to be another one for the front of the bottom strap. So you're just going to go and remove that. So I'll have 2 little ones and a big one. And from that, the entire thing comes out. You can see this is the hammer for the firearm. Come on. Lock position. This gets triggered when the slide is to the forward position right here. So you push down on that, pull the trigger, hammer comes forward. Just like that. Then gets reset. Click, right back into place. So hammer back, click, you're good to go. We'll get into disassembling that in a second, but let's just get this done the rest of the way. Now you can see here on the bottom, the bottom plate is being held captive by the slide, or excuse me, the bolt, and the bolt assembly is to the rear of the weapon. You can see it back there with the bolt face, the firing pin. So what we're going to do is see if I can remember how to do this, is take out, so you're going to want to push this down so you can see what you're working on for bolts and stuff in there. And then, I'm going to take out this screw right here. So, change out screwdriver bits here. This is a really small one. And that, whoop, I'm done. Nope. Put it back in, put it back in. Yes, I am done. Okay, so, woo! Ha, heavy. You're going to be able to see probably a little screw right at the end of my screwdriver right here. I don't know how well it's going to show up on the camera. If I angle it into the light, no. Got the flash going. There we go. So right there at the end of my screwdriver is a little screw, and that is the slide stop. Quick undo that slide stop. Not long enough. Not skinny enough. There we go. It has been a while since I disassembled this, so bear with me. Take out that screw and the slide stop. Going to pop right out. That just comes out just like that. So keep that with its screw. And now you should be able to lift up on that lever and push forward on the entire bolt mechanism. That should pop open, and the bolt should just slide right out. What am I doing here? Whoop. Loading lever came out. We'll go over that. Oh, jeez, what did I forget to do? Not that. Maybe I do need to take this out. Oh, there we go. I don't know what the hell's going on here, but so the bolt will come out. Now there's three basic parts to this that you can see here. There's the bolt, which is this part, the bolt slide or sled, I don't know, but this is what interacts with the locking lug, which is this thing that comes out right here. You can see that when it gets into the forward position, the slide will actuate it just a little bit to like right there, and that's what locks it into the top of the receiver. You can see that right there. So to disassemble this, you just take off the sled. I'm just going to call it a sled. And from that, there is going to be a tiny little pin that holds basically this entire assembly together. You're going to need a tiny little screwdriver just to drive out that pin. Whoop. I'm not going to do it all the way just because I don't really want to. But from this you can see that the locking lug is there, firing pin is there, extractors. It does have dual extractors, which is nice, kind of guarantees it's going to get the cartridge out of the chamber. And this is the firing pin and the firing pin hammer surface. If hammer hits here, drives the firing pin out just a little bit, but it gets the job done quite nicely. It will only, there's kind of a neat safety feature with this. It will only hit the firing pin to its full extent if the locking lug is in the up position. So you can see that right now it's kind of sticking out all the way, but the locking lug is in the up position. If it's in the back position, it won't actually hit the firing primer of the shot shell. So there's just a tiny little bit of space right there that has to happen to be able to fire the firearm, which is nice. It's kind of an interesting little side safety feature, which is pretty neat. To disassemble the bolt, you're going to drive this pin out right here. You will need a hammer for it. And then hammer that out. The firing pin will come out. You can see there's a nice little divot in the mechanism there. The firing pin will come out. The locking lug will slide out. You can, if you want to, undo the extractors. I would not suggest it because it is an absolute bitch to get those back in. I would not suggest that. Unless they're gunked and you're not getting extraction on your shells, I would not suggest taking those apart at all. Whew, that was a night that I'll never forget. Other than that, you can just make sure to clean the absolute piss out of everything here. And then, of course, reassemble everything correctly. So make sure it slides back and forth when you reassemble it, just like that. And you should be good to go on the bolt. This is the floor plate, or the loading ramp. Real simple milled part. It's just got the pin spring in the bottom here holding this lever together, and then a hole right through there for the screw where it balances in. You can take this apart. You can drive the pin out right there and take out the pin spring and kind of clean that out if you want to. Probably a good thing to do just to make sure everything's running correctly. And then onto the rest of the receiver. You're going to want to clean this very thoroughly. You can get a lot of buildup back in this area back here. It's just because if you're doing just a regular field clean, you're not going to get that, and gunk will get back in there. I had about, I don't know, 3 or 4 millimeters worth of what looked like tractor grease in the back when I cleaned it, and that was pretty gross. Don't want to deal with that again. But if you want to, there is a mechanism here. You can take that apart. That is basically just the see if I can do this. It's not going to let me. That's basically just the slide stop, I think. Don't know for sure, because I'm doing all this by guesswork the first time and now. But you can take that apart, degrease it, put it back together. It is just that screw right there, which I would suggest doing. Let's see if I can take it apart for you. Watch me not be able to get it back together now. Come on. So that's what this part is. I don't know quite exactly what it does, and people are going to probably rag on me for it, but I don't care. That's the clip that holds it in. So just make sure to get that back together when you reassemble it, because you don't want parts just not together. Yes, all right. Make sure to line everything up correctly, or you will have issues getting it back together. But that's with any gun. Just basically don't be dumb like I am. 'Cause I'm very dumb. Alright, there we go. Perfect. So, got that back together. Now we're going to concentrate on the trigger mechanism. I think I bumped the camera a little bit. There we go. Trigger mechanism is kind of a bitch because it's just whole lots of just little moving parts. But that's with any firearm, I think. So there is effectively two springs holding everything together. One is this big top spring right here. You can see that's this big curvature bit, and that powers just about everything. And then there's going to be a slightly smaller bottom spring. What we're going to do is take this. I'm going to hold it right here just so the spring doesn't sprung into nowhere. I'm sure that's a real word, but okay, so once that undoes itself, it will slide back and disengage from everything. Just come right out. Now everything's going to be loose, and you can see that smaller spring down in there. It is this part right here. So that is a secondary little kind of a leaf spring type deal, and that will do the same thing and just kind of slide right back out of there. It's got two a little cut down the middle, so it's kind of split into two parts. That will be for the safety and the actual trigger release mechanism. So you can just basically start disassembling everything. So there's going to be a whole bunch of pins that come out. This pin is for the actual hammer, so that'll come out. And then there will be another pin down here I'm not sure it's going to come out by hand. I don't want to hammer on it right now. There's another pin down here that you can see that is the catch, the safety catch. And that's basically the trigger, or the slide disconnect, that's what it is. And then also the trigger hinges on that pin as well. You can take that pin out, clean those parts, put it back together. There is a pin in the front here. It doesn't really come out, I think. Nope, I lied. That's the safety. Okay, so once you remove this pin, take out the trigger and the slide disconnect lever thing, you can take out the safety. And the safety is basically just right under here. And get all that stuff out, slide it back. There is a tiny little pin spring that you're going to want to make sure to retain, because that's what keeps it from just flopping back and forth. There's a little pin, and I don't think I can show it to you without can I? I'm gonna have to excuse them mowing outside my apartment. No, but you can hear it in there. Just make sure not to lose that little pin. You're never gonna get it again. I cleaned it outside when I did it. That was a mistake, because I did lose it, and I spent about 45 minutes trying to find that stupid little pin. I chose a great day to mow. So, pretty easy. Just assemble, clean everything, scrub it the heck down, and assemble that pin straight through there. And put your secondary spring in there. There's two notches on the side of this that you can see right there. The end of my thumbnail. I don't know if it's going to show up very well. There we go. These notches slide right into these two little groove things, 1 and 2 on each side. So that just goes right through there. You're going to have a screwdriver on hand to lift up the spring as you push it in. So lift it up and use another screwdriver to push it in theory. I did this once, I can do it again, I know. But not on camera, of course. There we go. Perfect. So you'll have slight spring tension to those items once again, unless it undoes itself. Perfect. Excellent. Okay. So after cleaning your hammer, you can assemble a hammer with the pin. You just have to make sure to line that right up, and then you'll be good to go on that. So you'll notice the hammer is super loose. It's because there isn't this big ass spring in there. So yes. And this can be kind of a bitch because you have to push down on the screw while you screw it in. To make sure everything is lined up correctly, and it's just really obnoxious. Wait. Yes, I was just dumb. Okay. So you don't want to make sure that gets down all the way. Just give you maximum spring tension on everything. So in theory, you should be able to hold down on the release here, just like that, and make sure your thumb's out of the way and fire the weapon, or fire the trigger, because it's not assembled yet. And then make sure, of course, that the safety engages. Yep, should be good on that. And then that's basically it. It's a really simple mechanism. It's just don't lose any parts, because I did, and that's really shitty. So I think that's effectively it. We're going to try reassembling this thing. First thing that we need to do is put the floor plate back in. And that just lines up. You can see that there's that peg kind of coming up from the side. That's static. That just stays in there. So you just slide that over the hole. And it just goes in just like that. This part, and if you line it up correctly, we'll just slide on its rails right in there. And slide it all the way to the back, just to make sure. I need a screwdriver for that. All the way to the back, click this down, make sure everything's assembled that way, make sure that everything is lined up correctly. Looks good. I'm going to put on this little release lever. So put this back down. You can come in from the front here and put that right back into position. Whoop. Screw that back in. That's snug but not over tight. You can click that back into the upward position, which kind of looks downwards for you, but so you just click that up and put on your bottom floor plate. It should line up just like that. I like to put the big back one through first, just because it lines up the front two ones nicely. And you can just put that in finger tight for now, just to line up the front two. And then put in one and two. And the front little knobby thing here, I actually don't think we needed to remove that. And then, of course, tighten everything down. And of course, the slide mechanism. Now it is still going to stick out just a little bit, but it is the slide disconnect button. So leave it just enough to actually move around. So test it out a few times, just get that going. Well, looks good. So I'm going to put on the back half here. That just slides on just like that. Perfect. Should be good to go. We have on top here. Tug but snug but not tight. And you're done. That's basically it. And then, of course, just like in the first half of the video, slide this together. Oops. There we go. Slide that together. Slide the slide back. Slide forward. You're good to go. So, screw that back down. And you're done. Safety off. You're done. That's it. Nice and simple. I know it's not a perfect video, and I know I probably did a whole bunch of stuff wrong, and if you want to see me go into more depth with the trigger or the bolt, let me know and I can upload something about that, but hopefully this is helpful to somebody. If you see anything that I did wrong, let me know in the comments. I'm definitely no expert. I'll try and make a annotation on the video to help whoever I can, but that's about it. So this has been the J. Stevens Arms and Tool Company 1909 520 Takedown Slide Shotgun. Thanks, have a great rest of the day.